Hey everyone, welcome to the 4th dungeon in our dungeon breakdown series. Today we're going to be talking about Fireteam Grasp of Avarice in 447, submitted by Kyo, Skies, and Chops. Now, much like Prophecy, this is a very short dungeon, but unlike Prophecy, this is much less technically complex and dense, so hopefully not a 40-minute video like last time, but yeah, I know some of you like that stuff, so we'll see how this goes. Let's go ahead and look at our POVs here. We got Skies, Kyo, Chops. Let's go ahead and start with the Skies POV. That's my plan. Now, like we normally do, let's go ahead and talk about team comp first. So unlike the other dungeons that we've looked at so far, this dungeon's team comp is actually very straightforward. It's just 3 hunters. It's just 3 hunters. Now, the reason why it's 3 hunters is because right at the start, much like most dungeons, there's no flag. So shatter skating right off the rip, that's a plus. Hunters are good for damage on both the bosses in this dungeon. That's also a plus. And finally, number 3, some of the skips, transitions, movements in this dungeon, kind of suitable for a hunter, right? So people have decided over time, Hunter is the best class to speedrun this dungeon on, at least if you're in a fire team of 3. Okay, so with that out of the way, let's go ahead and start with Skies' POV. Now, Skies' POV, I'm starting with him because his POV is probably the most normal out of everybody's during entrance. And that's because when you're doing Grasp, just normally, in a fire team, as a solo, you got to fill the bank, right? You got to fill the bank with those motes, got to get 60 motes in total. So that's what Skies is going to do. He's going to hang out. He's going to watch as Chops kills the inner ads here. They're going to leave the cave to respawn the ads here. Leave the cave detection system. And they're just going to spawn camp these ads using a caster frame, arc conductor ergo. And again, he's going to leave again. He's going to go back in. But you'll notice here that when he goes back in to dunk the motes, Chops is gone. He is gone. He is completely gone. He's like under the map somewhere. He's leaving. He's somewhere. What's he doing? And when Skies finishes entrance and that crystal disappears in the objective updates, where's he going? Where are you going, man? That's not the right way. Where are you going, man? So in order to better explain what's going on here, let's go ahead and move on to Chops' POV next. Now, Chops is the other player on entrance. You saw him. He was helping kill the ads. He was duoing this entrance section with our friend Skies. And unlike Skies, he's going to go into the inside here and he's going to deal with the inner ads at first, right? So they split up the ads here, make the ad clear a little bit more efficient. Skies is going to get the extra motes from the hive that are outside. And then they're both going to come and dunk in a second here once they start respawning the ads. So respawning the ads, boom, going back in. And you'll see here, after Chops is done helping his friend Skies here with dunking the motes, he is just going to leave. He just leaves. And he is going to... he's going off the map here. Oh, maybe not. Oh, he's going out of bounds. He's completely out of bounds at this point. Now, the reason why Chops leaves during entrance, but not before entrance with Kyo, who you may have noticed is also out of bounds, but not right as entrance ends either, is because of the way that this dungeon's checkpoints work. Now, interestingly, there are a couple different checkpoint types in Destiny. You have normal checkpoints, you have retroactive checkpoints, you have friendship checkpoints. The ones we're going to be focusing on today are normal and retroactive checkpoints. So normally in Destiny, when you hit a checkpoint, you just have to like walk over a certain region or complete a certain thing, right? And the game looks for the completion of that objective at a certain time, right? Because obviously most of the time objectives need to be done in a certain order. It wouldn't make sense to do the 4th encounter objective first and then the 1st encounter objective last, right? It doesn't really make sense. You got to do things sequentially. Now the thing is, certain checkpoints in Destiny, you can hit them before the game checks for them. And then when the game does check for them, it'll think, oh, this player was here at some point. I'm going to hit the checkpoint for them like retroactively. That's why it's called a retroactive checkpoint, right? However, normally, you need to hit checkpoints sequentially. So once entrance ends, and you can imagine the way the game is tracking the progression of this dungeon, you're traveling through this area, there's all these traps, levers, etc., etc. There's different areas, and you need to finish these different areas to progress through the dungeon. So this dungeon, unlike most dungeons, unlike most activities in general, has not 1, not 2, not 3, but 4 normal checkpoints that need to be hit sequentially in order to start Ogre and get pulled to that encounter. So you'll see here, Chops is actually going to hit 3 of them. The first one is called Skywatch, because it's at the start of the Skywatch load, as you can see in the bottom left. And then the second one, he's going to hit in a second here. He's going to line, just get just enough height with his Touch of Winter Duskfield. He's hitting this one. This one's called Hive or Thralls, because it spawns Thralls in this area. And then finally, this one is called Wizards, right? And if you guys have done this dungeon before, you know there's like a big pillar in the middle here, lots of air gaps, and there's just wizards that spawn in this area. So he's going to get these wizards to spawn, and then he's going to go into his inventory. So he hits these 3 checkpoints sequentially, and then you'll see when he comes out of his inventory here, he's getting joining allies, right? Now, there are a couple other checkpoints that need to be hit, because obviously Chops is not at the Ogre right now. Someone else is, and that someone is Kyo. So let's go ahead and look at Kyo's checkpoint real quick, or Kyo's POV, I should say. Now, Kyo is not helping on entrance, right? He is going straight out of the map. He's going to take a similar route to Chops here. However, his is a little different, and that's because Chops needs to hit all of these checkpoints after entrance has completed. He's perfectly timed it so that when entrance ends, he is at Skywatch and he's ready to hit those checkpoints in order. Kyo, on the other hand, he doesn't need to hit these checkpoints because they're not retroactive, so him hitting them doesn't do anything right now. So what is he doing instead? He goes around the left side here, and you'll notice his route is a lot more direct. It's a lot faster because he doesn't need to hit any of these, intermediate checkpoints. He's going to skip straight into this pushback. He's going to make his way up here, mountaintop, up this little ramp here, where the barrel rolls down, and he is going to make his way all the way up, around, and you may notice this area is right before Ogre. Ogre is in this big kind of rectangular box room. And so, what is Kyo doing here? Well, first thing Kyo does is he dies? He dies on the side of this invisible wall here. Why is he dying? Well, we're going to talk about this in a second, but this is one of the most popular examples of a speedrun tech called the IRB, or the interdimensional res breach. Now, if you want a more detailed explanation of how IRB works, how the IRB works in like a raid, for example, I'd recommend checking out the VOW breakdown where I talk about the IRB. But basically what an IRB does is it allows you to transpose your death location, your respawn location, from one load zone to another. So we talked about load zones before. They're just different regions that overlap with each other in a Destiny 2 activity. And sometimes, right, if you're very careful with your planning, there are certain areas where dying in one place in one load zone leads to a helpful location in another load zone. So Kyo is dying here, and in this load zone, the Ogre load zone, there's nothing helpful there. He's out of bounds, he's against the wall, like who cares, right? He's just dying there, right? However, you'll see after the Ogre encounter ends, Kyo is going to transpose those death coordinates from where he just died to another load zone, and it's going to put him, and it's going to respawn him in a much more useful location. So that's how an IRB works. So one of the checkpoints that I believe Chops is hitting right now is going to res Kyo, so he doesn't have to res himself. And then Kyo is responsible for hitting 2 checkpoints here. He hasn't hit either of them, and we're going to see them in just a second here. So the first one, he's going to mountaintop up, and this checkpoint is called pull, right? It's just called pull because that's what it does. Now, this is the only retroactive checkpoint here. Remember, there's 5 checkpoints that need to be hit between entrance ending and Ogre starting. This one is called pull. It's retroactive because I'm sure you guys are aware, if you guys are doing the Ogre encounter, it doesn't actually give joining allies to your fire team until you sword over or jump over the gap from the flag area to the main island with the crystal and the Ogre. You don't get joining allies until someone goes across. And so the game thinks this area, this sandy shore out of bounds here, is part of that main island. And so, because it's retroactive, Kyo can just briefly sit on this island, skate back, and now, when he hits the Ogre checkpoint to start the Ogre encounter, the game's like, wait, someone was already at the island, I should give joining allies to everyone. So, Chops is about to hit that wizard's checkpoint, and so Kyo is making his way over here. He's going to crouch under this area, and you'll see he hits Ogre, and boom, he instantly gets joining allies because he hit that pull checkpoint. And so now his job here is to avoid the joining. He has to get back in encounter bounds here real quick into where the encounter thinks he's in bounds, that is. And he briefly just barely avoids that joining, and he's going to wait here for a little bit. We're going to return to Kyo's POV after we take a look at what his teammates are doing to get into the encounter and start getting motes. So let's go ahead and go back to Skies' POV. We're doing a full rotation here, and we're going to see what does Skies do after entrance is done. So we said, what is Skies doing? He doesn't go down the crystal. And if his teammates are hitting all the prerequisite checkpoints in order to start Ogre, why is he doing this? Why can't he just wait for joining? That's a good question. Well, you'll see here that Skies is actually doing a partial skip. And instead of going the route that Kyo and Chops do, he's going to do something a little special. Okay? So this is right now looking similar to Kyo's route, except he's doing something different. Instead of continuing around this big rock face, he's getting joining right now. So why doesn't he just sit there and get joining? And you'll see in just a second why he does this. Boom. You see that? So basically what Skies just did, it's like a death warp. In this particular instance, it might be called a flawless skip. You may have seen this in Garden before between the first encounter and the undergrowth load zone, where people kind of soared into that area, that kind of white curved rock. That's a flawless skip. What flawless skips are is basically if you die to a load zone and you don't have a previous valid death point, and you didn't die in a respawn restricted zone, so you're basically when you die to a load and it respawns you, it inherits the property of your last death. And because Skies has never died in this dungeon, his last death wasn't in a respawn restricted zone. And so the game just respawns him wherever it thinks is the default spawning area. And in this case, that's in front of the crystal, in front of the Ogre. So this is a really cool tech because I didn't see this in previous Grasp runs when I was paying attention to Grasp back in the day, maybe like a year or so ago. So this is kind of a relatively new strat. And what this allows Skies to do is get into the encounter faster than joining allies. Now, if you guys are not aware, joining allies is 11 seconds from the start of joining to when you are able to move out of black screen. And so Skies being able to interrupt his joining timer and just get into the encounter right away means that he can kill the Scorch Captain very quickly and open the door for Chops, who is getting joining allies because he can't die to the load zone because he's actually in the load zone hitting checkpoints. So you see here, the Scorch Vandal is dead, and Skies just fires off a quick 3 rounds into that little receptacle there so that Chops is able to get the right motes. And if you guys have done Grasp before, probably a funny story from a couple of you, if you're inside of a room and someone opens the opposite side room, you get trapped, right? So what Skies is doing here is instead of trying to open left as quickly as possible, he's holding his Scorch Cannon projectile in the receptacle, waiting for Chops' call saying, I got all the motes, and then he's going to open it up, right? So you can see here how this cool Death Warp tech from entrance allows Skies to get the Scorch Cannon faster and open the room for when Chops is ready. Chops can immediately go into right and get his motes instead of having to wait as both of them spawn in and kill the Scorch Captain, or the Scorch Vandal, I should say. So you see here, Heritage, Forbearance, pretty cool stuff. They don't need a flag in this dungeon for supers because when you get 10 motes in this dungeon, cool mechanic, you get all of your abilities plus your super. So pretty cool stuff here. Skies is going to make his way to the crystal, and we're going to watch him do tractor grapple melee damage. So these guys, what they do is they pre-pop on Nighthawk, they give themselves Radiant, and they switch to a Spirit of Syntho class item, boom, Goldie, and some grapple melees with the nearby adds on the left ledge, giving them what they need. Pretty fast kill, boss is dead, there you go, boom. Okay. Let's go ahead and skip over to Chops' POV real quick so you guys know exactly what I'm talking about when I say he's doing the right motes. A little bit too forward. There we go. So joining allies, you see this big black screen here? Skies has completely avoided that thanks to his Death Warp. He's already in the encounter. He's left a little crystal here that Chops can line off of. Very nice of him, very helpful. And so Chops, he's just going to line in here, and he is going to use his super. And a lot of the strategies in this dungeon actually make use of this 10 mote mechanic here, right? Every 10 motes you get a full super and your abilities. So he uses his super to ad clear, pretty clever use by him. And so all these ads are dying, they're dead, and he's able to just go and grab these motes and boom, he has a Goldie back, right? So very helpful stuff. He calls the Skies, you can go ahead and open left, and he's going to go ahead and dunk his motes here. Okay, now unlike Skies, he's going to be on Navigator. He's going to make a grapple point for himself, as well as give Woven Mail to Skies. Now, there was a mod during this season that they ran called Shield Crush, which basically, I believe, increased your melee damage when you had a darkness buff. So like Frost Armor or Woven Mail, that is something that they are giving to each other, as well as they have Frost Armor from Kyo, who is underground right now with Renewal. We'll see what he's doing in a second here. But yeah, pretty straightforward. Same thing as Skies here, just Nighthawking as soon as that text line appears in chat, and just going to town on this Ogre, going absolutely ham on this guy, and pretty fast kill. Okay, so now that the Ogre is dead, we're going to go ahead and look at what's going on in the top right, because Kyo is definitely not where he was when we last were looking at his POV. So how does he get there? Let's go ahead and look at Kyo and what he's doing during the Ogre encounter. So Kyo barely avoids the joining here. He's going to wait for his joining allies timer to reset, and he's doing a little dance here. It's reset back up to 5, and he's going to make his way around here, jump up, and he's going to swap loadouts like we talked about to Renewal Grasp after sliding so that his head is practically sticking through the floor here, right? So he's shooting the Ogre to draw aggro so that the Ogre is busy focused on him instead of his teammates. And when his teammates arrive here in just a second, he's going to throw a Renewal Duskfield at them, give them Woven Mail in order to trigger Shield Crush, as well as just helping them survive a little bit as they are being bombarded with Hive Grenades. He's going to make a grapple point for his team. And one more cool thing here is he's going to break his crystal for Whisper of Shards as he needs a cold snap for his skip, which you're going to see some pretty cool tech in the future here. But yeah, he's going to do that. He's going to break that for improved ability regeneration, and he has a Slice Trace as well. So he's going to dodge and he's going to apply sever to the boss so that when these guys are shooting at the boss, they have increased solar ability damage thanks to Facet of Courage. So again, boom, severed. And now he is going to leave. He's going to leave. Where is he going? Where is he going? Boom. So that was pretty fast. That is a death to load. So if you hit a load zone at a certain angle, just like we saw, I believe Sky's doing, he was dying to load to hit a death warp / flawless skip into Ogre. Kyo is going to do the same thing. So death to loads have special properties. We already talked about them before, but they are a special kind of death. And the IRB requires you to hit a death to load to whatever load zone you are trying to transpose your coordinates to. So you can see here, he crouches and moves kind of slowly. Now he's hitting a load zone at a specific angle here on the back side of the load zone, which is more likely to give him the death to load that he wants. He quickly hits that death to load. And instead of rezzing himself, IRBs require an autorez. So autorezes are basically, you've probably seen this before, where someone doesn't revive you, it just says revived, like Aegis, for example, right? So there's many autorezes. They're often, in transitions, hitting certain checkpoints. The end of an encounter is almost always an autorez, for example. So here you'll see, as soon as Chops and Skies are finished killing the Ogre, it spawns him. And you'll see he's in the Shroud load zone, which is the load zone between the Ogre encounter and the final encounter. And he is somewhere quite helpful. He is completely out of bounds, and he is on top of this rusty building. And he's going to use it to pull out a Sparrow. And remember, this is the Shroud load zone. This is the transition area where you're allowed to use your Sparrow because it's mines. And he's going to start slipstreaming. Okay, so he's going to hit this very, very long slipstream. This is one of the coolest skips, really, in probably Destiny history. You are just slipping through this huge, grand open air space. But he is trying to be quite precise here because not only does Kyo need to be quite fast here, but he also needs to aim his slipstream for a very particular location. So you'll see here, there's a big kind of balloon kind of object, which has a bunch of chains. That's where Kyo is aiming to go right now. So he's looking for certain landmarks to aim his Sparrow. He's going to make his way through this mountain here, out of bounds. Things will become a lot more visible in a second here. Yeah, there you go. And so Kyo is looking for a certain area on this mountain range here as a lineup. And as soon as he is on that area, he is going to get off his Sparrow. He's going to drop down, change his frame rate, and boom. So his frame rate, he had a frame rate cap on there. It makes slipstreaming a little bit easier, makes you lose less height when you're slipstreaming, which is kind of important for a slip like this. But now that he doesn't want to have 30 FPS gameplay, he turns off his frame cap, and now he's going to aim for the height of the chains, right? So he's at the height of the chains right now. Now, this is a very, very precise IRB that he's doing right now. He's setting his spawn out of bounds for a specific area during the Fallen Shield encounter, okay? So this is very precise because I'm sure you guys remember people were using Silence and Squall to like solo finish the Fallen Shield encounter at some point. It is still possible to kill that captain out of bounds, or the vandal out of bounds, I believe. But you need to actually get into the box itself because Bungie has created a sort of multi-shell box around the captain, right? And so what an IRB allows you to do is it allows you to basically get inside any location in a load zone if you're able to get to those global coordinates from a neighboring load zone like we talked about. And so Kyo here, he is basically trying to get his Sparrow to the perfect location so that in the next load zone, his death corresponds to somewhere in this box, okay? But it's a very small box, so he has to get this just right. So as you can see here, he's going to get off his Sparrow, and now he's going to throw a Cold Snap at the bottom of his Sparrow. Then he's going to shoot his Cold Snap projectile midair in order to spawn crystals, and then, as you would imagine, he dies using Exteris on top of his crystals. So he's currently setting his spawn, just like remember when he died on the side of that invisible wall before starting Ogre. Same thing, there's 2 IRBs in this skip. It's a double IRB even, because you use one IRB to get to the area that you need to get to for the second IRB. So pretty cool stuff here. Double use of one of the most crazy techs in Destiny speedrunning for sure. And now, Sky's here. He's going to finish the last mine, and that's going to allow Kyo to autorez, right? There's many autorezes like we talked about in dungeons and raids. That's one of them. They finish mines, everyone gets to be rezzed, right? So there you go. Kyo is going to autorez. That speeds up his respawn timer because it was 45 seconds before. And now he is going to line all the way to do the death to load. Okay. We are going to briefly skip over Kyo's POV here and go to Sky's just so I can show you exactly what I was talking about when I set the autorez here. So, I skipped a little bit too far forward here. So yeah, so Sky's basically after the Ogre encounter is over, he was going to make his way through the mine section here. He is going to skip all the way over, make his way to the B mine, and he's just going to continue shatter skating all the way around. And the two hunters that are not Kyo, so Skies and Chops here, both of them have the option to help with mines, except one of them is going to make it to D mine and the other person is going to do something else. So Skies here is waiting for Kyo's call. As soon as he sees Kyo die or Kyo calls, he is going to hit this last mine here. It's going to res Kyo perfectly in time, and then Skies is going to make his way forward. We're going to talk about what he's going to do in just a second, but I just want to show you exactly what that autorez trigger looks like for Kyo. So next up with Kyo here, he is actually, we have already watched this part, he is going to line off his sparrow, or off the crystals I should say, and he's going to make his way to the Sunken Lair load zone. The Sunken Lair load zone is where the Fallen Shield encounter takes place, and you'll see here that Kyo hits a certain angle into this load zone that allows him to die to the load. We talked about dying to loads before. This is the exact same thing. This is what is required to hit an IRB. So boom, he wants to transpose his coordinates onto the Sunken Lair load zone. He does it, and his teammates auto-res him by hitting another checkpoint, and now he's in a box. We're going to talk about how he gets into this box real quick by looking at Chops' POV next, because Chops is hitting the next autorez that Kyo needs to spawn inside of that box. So as you can see here, Chops is behind Skies. They are doing this Shatterskate mines entrance here. Chops is hitting mine A. Basically, these guys are all hitting any mine that they can to help out. He does accidentally hit his feet here, but it's not really a big deal, as at the end of the day, you're waiting for Skies to hit D mine, and Skies is waiting for Kyo to die before he can hit that D mine, so this doesn't particularly matter too much. But you'll see here that Chops is going to opt not to hit D mine, and that's because Chops is going to go out of bounds for a specific reason. And we'll see that in just a second here. It's going to line into this wall, go just nice through this hole in the ceiling, conveniently placed for him, and he's going to be on blink. He's going to continue his momentum forward as he skates off that pushback. And finally, he's going to make his way to basically the same place where Kyo was, right? He's going to die to that load zone. And as soon as that autorez happens, like we've talked about, it's going to spawn him over here. It's like a death warp, like a flawless skip. This is the default area of the Sunken Lair, right? So he's going to spawn here. And what is he doing? He's going forward and he's dropping down. And the reason for this is because this flag area right here, there's another checkpoint, and this is another autorez. So see here in the top right that he's kind of, you know, this is him. He's watching, this is Kyo watching the back of Chops' head here. And boom, that autorez, him dropping down and hitting that flag checkpoint, is what allows Kyo to complete his IRB, right? So the whole reason why Chops doesn't help with hitting D-mine is not only does Skies not really need his help, it's like a one-person job, but actually skipping from that C-D area to this area to die to the load zone is faster than making your way through the crystal caves just manually as if you were doing it just through the normal route. And he needs to get here fast enough to auto-res Kyo as soon as Kyo is dead. Okay, so now that we understand why Chops is down here, why he skips from the C to D mine section, let's go back to Kyo. Okay, so little recap here. Kyo, he's used an IRB to get out of bounds, to summon a sparrow, and slip all the way here to set a very precise set of coordinates in order to actually kill the captain, that is the Fallen Shield kind of proxy entity, in order to instantly end that encounter, right? Now on top of that, after that, he has a 45-second respawn timer, and so he gets auto-resed by one of his teammates completing D-mine. And then he gets auto-resed by a second teammate who hits a flag checkpoint and drops down, okay? So that would be Skies and Chops that are doing that, respectively. Okay, so one more thing here that I want to talk about. So he's inside the central box here, and the Vandal is actually, it's somewhere around here. I think it's like invisible to him right now. You might be wondering, why does he shoot it at the wall instead of shooting it directly where the Vandal might be? And he told me the reason for this is because Galley, it kills, if you aim directly at the Vandal, it kills it too quickly. And then so Kyo's spawn will be set, and when he shoots the ground, he spawns inside the box when the encounter ends. So we talked about how when encounters end, there's an auto-res, right? We want his auto-res to spawn him in a specific location. We definitely don't want it to spawn him in this box. So the reason why Kyo shoots the wall here is because he wants the wolf packs to linger and be the thing that kills the vandal so that he has time to die before the encounter ends. So you'll see that in just a second here. He shoots the ground. He's basically gated to Galli's fire rate here. And that's why he wants the wolf packs to kill the vandal instead of shooting the vandal directly. And you'll see here that for whatever reason, when the encounter ends and these guys wipe, which they all just died, it warps them above where the Scorch Cannon launcher is for the final area. So I'm not sure why this is. I think just the default spawn area, I guess, for the like transition section up to the final boss is up here, but this certainly saves them some time. They don't need to get a Scorch Vandal. They don't need to like a rocket grapple up the hole or anything. They just spawn up here. So whatever, I guess. So that's Kyo. He dies to warp up to the final area. Let's go to Sky's POV once more in order to actually see what's going on. So Sky's POV inbounds. He is getting here and he is doing the same thing as Kyo and Chops here. The second that Kyo starts the encounter and is in that box and is shooting that Gjallarhorn, they all die. So you'll see here in just a second that is happening. As soon as you see this change here, just give it a moment. Kyo's dead. And boom, the encounter has started. Fallen Shield joining allies. Boom, he dies right away. And you'll see as soon as he opens his inventory, they all wiped, but the encounter is over. So the game just, you know, spawns them here, right? So that's what's going on inbounds outside of Kyo. Everyone's kind of just doing the same thing. So these guys are all going to make their way up here. And we're going to go ahead and look at their strategy for final boss, which is arguably the simplest part of this entire run, right? I mean, there's no crazy skips going on here. It's just kind of finishing the last encounter, sending it home. Seems to be a common theme with dungeon bosses, right? With Prophecy as well. Final boss, super straightforward. Pit, final boss, super straightforward. The Throne, final boss, super straightforward, right? So kind of interesting that like the boss encounter in a lot of these dungeons is the most simple when it comes to speedrunning. Now you notice here, Skies is going to mini boss spawn kill using the tether. And of course, you know, he's not going to be on tether for DPS because he is much going to prefer Goldie instead for boss damage, but he's going to abuse the mote mechanic actually twice here on this roll, which is something I wanted to mention. So these guys are going to kill these bosses with surrounded until its return. He's going to pick up all of these motes here. And you'll notice in just a second that he's going to pick up 3 motes and he's going to tether the wall behind the boss. So he's going to pre-tether and then he's going to swap to his damage loadout. And then he's going to pick up even more motes. And as soon as he hits 20 here, he's going to get another super. So 3 supers in one encounter in the space of like 30 seconds. So again, great, clever use of the mote mechanic by these guys. You have a tether to spawn kill the mini bosses. You have a tether for damage, because if you guys are not aware, dormant tethers lie in wait for like 30 seconds before they detect an enemy near them and tether them, and then they obviously start to tick down on their duration unless they snare additional adds. So him tethering there this early, that tether is going to be well in advance for boss damage in order to have a full 30% debuff for what they're about to do to this boss. Okay, so again, they're just dunking their motes. He's going to switch to an actual damage loadout here. Throws a Dusk Field for Facet of Courage, pops Cades, and boom. 1, 2, Cascade Bait, bang. Well, unfortunately, Skies perished here, but yeah, pretty fast kill there. My last thing that I'm going to talk about here is the Chops POV, and then we're going to be done. So Chops, he is going to change to his damage loadout here. He's going to rally on Goldie. And interestingly, right, Chops, Skies, Kyo, these guys are all in specific locations at the start of this encounter. And that's because they told me, or Kyo told me rather, shout out to Kyo for helping me with some of the strats here, that they are manipulating the spawn of the Scorch Vandal. By standing in specific areas, they are going to force the Scorch Vandal to always spawn in the same place. And that's right here. You'll see here, Chops is able to just spawn kill him right off the rip and grab this Scorch Cannon. He's going to spawn in 2 sets of motes so that there is enough for 20 on every single side, which adds up to more than 60 if you include the mini boss motes that were picked up earlier, which is more than enough for him to travel around here and grab everything he needs. Of course, he gets his Goldie back from getting 10 motes, so he's free to Nighthawk the Scorch Vandal. And now they're going to sit by the crystal. You saw one of them was on Cascade Bait. I believe the other 2 are on Cascade Marcillion. You can see here. Pretty good stuff. Again, gunpowder for some extra free damage. And 1, 2, bang, 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 bang. And the boss is dead. All right, that's it. I think that was way shorter than Prophecy in terms of explanation. There's no cube in this encounter, just pretty cool, right? You have a dungeon with a pretty clever skip structure to handle the many checkpoints that need to be hit before hitting Ogre. You have a double IRB skip, the first and only of its kind so far in Destiny. I don't think there's any other skip structures in Destiny where you have a double IRB, one IRB to set another. There might be one in Deepstone Crypt in the distant future, but that's definitely like more of a theory strat than a real strat right now. And then you have people hitting mines while simultaneously hitting autorez checkpoints for your skipper out of bounds. You have some simultaneously, going on POVs there, pretty interesting stuff. And then you have the crazy death warp up to boss, which exists for some reason. And then the final boss, which is just a crazy fast cascade point, still hunt, Nighthawk, melt. That is it, guys. That is it. I hope you guys enjoyed. Yeah, I think our next dungeon is Duality, if I'm not mistaken, which that's going to be pretty interesting too. So stick around for that, and I hope you guys enjoyed.